You think campfire stories are just tales. Tonight, you'll hear 5 true Boy Scout encounters where the woods played games, and not everyone came home from a clown that laughs with drowning lungs, 2 tents that appear from another time to a fire that feeds on more than wood. These aren't legends, these are warnings. Press play if you dare camp where they did.
The final hide and seek. It was supposed to be just another weekend campout at Oak Hollow Forest, a place famous among local Boy Scout troops for its vast trails and deep woods. Our Troop 714 had been planning it for months. I was 14 at the time, old enough to be cocky, but still young enough to feel uneasy when stories about the woods started making their rounds around the campfire. I remember standing with my backpack digging into my shoulders as the troop leaders shouted final instructions, the sun dipping low behind the tree line. The air smelled of pine and distant rain. We were warned to stick together, to always use the buddy system, and under no circumstance to wander off after dark. As we marched into the woods, setting up camp about 3 miles deep, the forest grew dense and quiet in a way that felt unnatural. You couldn't hear birds or the usual buzz of insects. It was too still. We joked about it at first, mocking scary stories told by older scouts. Tales of disappearances, weird shapes glimpsed between trees, and a deep, abandoned well somewhere off the trail that no one was supposed to talk about. All camp legends meant to scare new kids, ... Or so I thought. That first night around the fire, our scoutmaster told us an old local story about a Boy Scout who vanished here decades ago. His name was Danny McBride. Supposedly, during a late-night game of hide and seek, Danny hid too well. They never found him. Rumors said that if you played hide and seek in Oak Hollow after dark, Danny would come looking for you ... Wanting someone to join him wherever he had ended up, we laughed it off, pretending not to feel the cold settling into our spines. But that night, after lights out, someone suggested we play hide and seek for real. Just among the tents. Harmless fun. Despite the warnings, despite the growing mist creeping along the ground, a group of us snuck out, giggling and daring each other. I volunteered to be it, covering my eyes and counting, while the others scattered into the dark. When I finished counting, the world felt heavier, somehow. The mist had thickened, blurring the trees into long black shadows. I found a couple of my friends quickly, their nervous laughter giving them away. But as I searched for the others, I wandered farther from camp, the firelight behind me disappearing entirely. I called out their names, but the forest swallowed my voice. Then a flash of movement. Someone or something darted between 2 trees ahead. Thinking it was one of my friends, I chased after it, weaving between trunks, my heart pounding. I kept catching glimpses of a small figure, almost my height, ducking behind trees, leading me deeper and deeper into the woods. I should have stopped. I should have turned back, but something about the way the figure moved, almost gliding, compelled me to follow. Finally, I stumbled into a small clearing I didn't recognize. In the middle stood an old well, exactly like the one from the stories. The stones were crumbling, covered in moss, the mouth of it yawning open into blackness. The air around it was freezing, my breath visible even though it was late spring. And standing next to it was the boy. He wore a tattered scout uniform, impossibly old-looking, with patches faded and frayed. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were hollow, deep, black voids. I froze, my instincts screaming to run, but my body wouldn't move. The boy raised one hand slowly, pointing directly at me. I stumbled back, but my foot caught on something. I looked down. It was a rusted, broken flashlight, half buried in the dirt. When I picked it up, a name was carved into the side, Danny McBride. I ran. Branches whipped my face, and I could hear something chasing me. Not just footsteps, whispers, cries, something scratching at the trees. I didn't know how far I'd gone or how long I ran, but eventually I saw the glow of the campfire through the trees and burst into the clearing, gasping and sobbing. The other scouts rushed to me, asking what happened. When I told them, they laughed, but it was nervous laughter. Then someone noticed the old flashlight clutched in my hand. We all stared at it, and the scoutmaster turned pale when he saw the name. He pulled me aside, away from the others. He admitted in a whisper that Danny's body had never been found. Only his flashlight, discovered near the well years ago, and it had been buried with him in a small, empty casket. We left Oak Hollow at first light, but sometimes when I walk alone at night, I swear I hear footsteps behind me, see glimpses of a small figure just out of sight. I don't think I ever really escaped that night. I think part of me stayed behind at the well, and something else followed me home. The Laugh Beyond the Lake. Camp Redwood was famous among the Boy Scouts in our town. Deep in the forest, beside a murky lake, it was considered a rite of passage to spend a full weekend there without freaking out. I'd heard stories, of course, about strange sounds echoing over the water at night, about campers seeing someone in a clown costume standing at the edge of the woods, just watching. Everyone said it was just campfire tailies meant to scare the younger kids. I believed that. Until the summer of 2018. It was late July when Troop 304 set out for Redwood. There were 15 of us, plus 2 troop leaders. The first night went fine hiking, fishing, telling dumb jokes. But that evening, after dinner, the older scouts dared everyone to play a twisted version of hide and seek. They called it Hide from the Clown. The rules were simple. One person would wear a plastic clown mask they found in the camp's storage shed and try to find the others. Easy enough. I didn't think twice when they picked me to be the first clown. I pulled on the cracked white mask, the plastic sticky with age. The eye holes were wide and dark, making it hard to see. I counted loudly to 50 while everyone scattered into the trees. Then I started searching, laughing like a maniac the way they told me to add to the atmosphere. It was dumb, but also weirdly fun at first. About 10 minutes in, I heard something strange across the lake. A low chuckle. Not a normal laugh, but a thick, wet gurgle, like someone trying to laugh while choking. I pulled the mask up and squinted into the darkness. There, on the other side of the water, barely visible in the rising mist, was a figure in a clown costume. At first, I thought it was one of the others playing a prank. But the figure wasn't moving like a kid. It stood unnaturally still, head tilted too far to one side, arms dangling limp at its sides. It felt wrong. Deep in my gut, something told me to run. But I was frozen, staring. Then the figure moved fast. One moment it was across the lake. The next it was halfway around the shoreline, coming toward me in a slow, shuffling lurch. I screamed, ripping off the mask and bolting back toward camp, tripping over roots and rocks. I slammed into one of the troop leaders, babbling about what I'd seen. They chalked it up to the dark playing tricks on me, maybe a raccoon or a shadow. I wanted to believe them. I really did. But that night, lying awake in my tent, I heard it again, the gurgling laugh much closer this time, just beyond the tree line. Branches snapped. Something heavy shuffled through the underbrush. I lay paralyzed, every muscle screaming to hide. Eventually, the noises faded, and I must have passed out from exhaustion. The next morning, one of the younger scouts was missing. We searched all day. They even called in park rangers. No sign, no tracks. Nothing but a single shoe, found right at the water's edge, toes pointing out toward the lake like he'd just walked in. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said it was a kidnapping. Some whispered about the clown of Redwood, an old legend about a hermit who drowned in the lake decades ago, and whose spirit now wandered the woods in a clown costume, luring kids away. None of it made sense, but the fear was real. We packed up and left a day early. 2 weeks later, the missing boy's body washed ashore. His face was twisted in terror, and clutched in his hand was a plastic clown Mask 1 that didn't match the one we'd used for the game. I still can't sleep without locking my windows, even though I live nowhere near a lake. And sometimes, just as I drift off, I swear, I hear it, that thick, choking laugh, creeping closer. The tents that weren't ours. It was the last night of our annual Boy Scout Campout, and everyone was jittery from too many marshmallows, ghost stories, and the general thrill of being away from home. Camp Larkspur was deep in the national forest, so far from town that even our cell phones had given up trying to find a signal. At night, our troop leader, Mr. Jenkins, had everyone pitch their tents in a wide clearing near the woods, arranging them in a loose circle around the central fire pit. Around 11 p.m., the fire had died down to glowing embers, and most of the boys had retreated into their tents. I stayed out a little longer, lying back on the grass, staring up at the stars. That's when I noticed something strange. Across the clearing, half hidden by the dark, were 2 tents that hadn't been there before. They were smaller, older-looking, canvas instead of nylon, and set a bit apart from the rest. I thought maybe some hikers had joined us without telling Mr. Jenkins, but when I asked him about it, he frowned and said he hadn't seen anyone new. His brow furrowed in concern, but he waved it off, telling us to stay in our own tents and not bother whoever they were. That should have been the end of it. But around midnight I woke up to the sound of soft crying. It wasn't coming from our tents. It came from the new ones. I listened, heart hammering. The crying grew louder, more frantic, mixed with raspy whispers in a language I didn't recognize. My curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my flashlight, unzipped my tent as quietly as possible, and stepped into the cold night. The 2 old tents stood still across the clearing, faint shapes in the mist. I approached, heart pounding so hard I thought it would wake the others. As I drew closer, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath puffed out in little clouds. The first tent was empty. Inside, just dirt. No sleeping bags. No backpacks. Nothing to suggest anyone had ever been inside. Confused, I turned to the second tent. As I reached for the flap, I heard it again, a whisper right next to my ear. "Come inside." I froze. The voice was hoarse, childlike but wrong, somehow stretched thin and broken. Against every instinct, screaming in my head, I flicked the flashlight beam at the tent. The flap moved. Very slowly, something inside began to push against the fabric from within, as if a hand, no, something larger was pressing outward. I stumbled back, tripping over a root, my flashlight clattering to the ground. In the strobe of the flickering beam, I saw a face press against the canvas, pale, grinning, eyes like hollow pits. I ran. I didn't stop until I crashed into Mr. Jenkins' tent, shouting incoherently. He and a couple of the older scouts grabbed flashlights and followed me back. The tents were gone. No footprints. No flattened grass, nothing. The next morning, Mr. Jenkins called an early end to the campout. We packed up fast, leaving the clearing behind. As we were loading up the van, one of the younger boys tugged on my sleeve. He was pale, shaking. I saw them too, he whispered. They asked me to play hide and seek, but they never said who would be it. Years later, I found an old newspaper clipping online about Camp Larkspur. Decades ago, a group of scouts had disappeared from that same clearing during a hide-and-seek game. Only their tents were found old, canvas ones pitched exactly where I saw them. Sometimes at night, when everything is quiet, I hear that same whisper near my window. Come inside. The campfire that wouldn't die. When you're a Boy Scout, you learn early that fire safety is a big deal. Never leave a campfire unattended. Always drown it before bed. Double check its out. It's a rule hammered into us so hard, it was almost second nature. That's why what happened at Camp Red Hollow never made sense. Our troop arrived on a Friday afternoon, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Red Hollow was infamous for how quiet it was. No bird song, no rustle of animals, just an endless hush that seemed to press against your ears. Still, we set up camp, built a fire in the center of the clearing, and settled in. The first night went normally enough. Stories, s'mores, laughter. When it was time for bed, we extinguished the fire properly, like we'd been taught. Water, dirt, stirring the embers until they were cold to the touch. But when we woke up, the fire was burning. Not a little ember, not a weak flameful roaring, as if someone had been feeding it all night. Mr. Ellis, our scoutmaster, was furious, accusing some of us of sneaking out and relighting it. No one confessed. No one even wanted to look at it. There was something wrong about that fire. Its flames were oddly white, too bright against the gray morning mist. That day, weird things started happening. Our compasses spun wildly. Several boys got sick with sudden nosebleeds. One even claimed to see something in the woods, a tall, thin figure with a blackened face, standing just beyond the tree line, watching. We should have left then, but Mr. Ellis insisted we stick to the schedule. The second night, we drowned the fire even more thoroughly. Buckets of water, shovels of dirt. I even stomped on the embers until my boots were soaked. Still, the fire was raging by dawn. This time, the ground around it was littered with blackened feathers and small animal bones. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the woods were completely silent. No birds. No insects. Just the crackle of that unnatural flame. That night, the boys were too scared to sleep. We huddled in groups, flashlights flickering weakly against the creeping dark. Around 2 a.m, we heard it, the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling our tents. Heavy, like boots sinking into soft earth. Every few minutes we'd hear a soft whisper, almost like the crackling of the fire, saying, "Feed it." I couldn't take it anymore. Gripping a hatchet, I crept out of my tent to confront whoever or whatever was out there. The fire blazed at the center of the clearing, but now, towering above it, was a figure, not a man. It was shaped like a human, but its skin was charred black, its mouth hanging open in a silent scream. Its body seemed stitched together from ash and bone. As I watched, frozen in horror, it raised a skeletal hand and pointed at me. "Feed it," it rasped. I turned and bolted back into the woods, not caring where I went. Behind me, I heard the others screaming. At some point, I must have blacked out, because I woke up at dawn, lying near the dirt road that led back to town. Some hikers found me and took me to the rangers. When they returned to Red Hollow, the camp was deserted. No tents, no boys, no scoutmaster. All they found was the fire still burning at the center of the clearing dot. No matter how much water they poured on it, it wouldn't go out. I still have nightmares about that figure, and sometimes when I'm walking alone at night, I catch a whiff of smoke in the air and hear a voice, faint but insistent, whispering, "Feed it." The Vanishing Patrol. When I first heard about Camp Devil's Bend, I thought it was just another creepy name made up to scare new scouts. A rite of passage, something the older boys used to haze the younger ones. But by the time that long weekend ended, I realized the name wasn't a joke, and we were lucky that any of us made it back. Our troop arrived late Friday afternoon, exhausted after a long hike into the hills. Devil's Bend wasn't an official camp. It was an abandoned scouting site, closed decades ago after some incident no one wanted to explain. Mr. Kavanaugh, our temporary leader, insisted it was just an opportunity to prove our survival skills. The first night, the forest around us felt wrong, not threatening exactly, just off. The air was still, the trees too still, like they were holding their breath. We tried to shake it off, joking around the campfire and roasting marshmallows, but the woods stayed unervingly silent, pressing in like a living thing. In the middle of the night, we were woken by whispers, faint at first, then growing louder, weaving through the trees. When we stumbled outside, flashlights in hand, we found footprints, hundreds of them, circling the camp. Some small, like a child's, others massive and misshapen, with way too many toes. The next day, Mr. Kavanaugh split us into patrols to search the area, thinking it was local kids playing pranks. My group, Patrol 4, headed east, toward a stretch of dense forest that none of the maps covered. That's where we found the first totem. It hung from a low branch, woven from sticks and animal bones, swaying gently, even though there was no wind. Its shape was vaguely human, with long, broken limbs. None of us wanted to touch it. Instead, we marked our location and moved on. But as we pushed deeper, we found more hanging from trees, stuck into the ground, hidden inside hollow trunks. The farther we went, the older they looked. Some were rotted and splintered. Others seemed freshly made, almost wet with something dark and sticky. When we tried to head back, we realized we were lost. The forest seemed to twist around us. No matter which direction we turned, the sun stayed frozen above the trees, never shifting. Our compasses spun wildly. One kid swore he heard someone calling his name from deep in the brush. But when we shined our lights, there was nothing there. That's when Tommy vanished. He was right behind me, muttering about how weird everything was, and then he wasn't. No struggle, just gone. We searched, screamed, tore through the underbrush, but there was no sign of him. It was like the forest had swallowed him whole. The sun finally began to set, but instead of getting darker, the woods lit up with a sickly green glow. Shapes moved between the trees, small, pale figures that didn't seem quite human. We ran. I don't remember how long. My legs gave out. I collapsed, gasping, the world spinning around me. When I woke up, it was morning, and I was lying just outside the original campsite. Of the 12 scouts in my patrol, only 3 of us made it back. Mr. Cavanaugh and the others were never found. The strangest part? When the Rangers arrived, the forest was normal. No totems, no weird footprints, no green glow. Just trees and dirt and silence. But sometimes when I close my eyes at night, I hear it again, the low, mocking whisper of those unseen figures, one by one. And when I dream, I see Tommy standing just beyond the tree line, his mouth sewn shut, his eyes pleading for help I can never give.